us.
Well, I just finished Obi-Wan and I'm feeling a little torn. Episodes 3, 5, and 6 have all the good scenes, but even in those, the quality of the show feels frustratingly inconsistent. Episode 1 and 2 have these awful sections where someone chases Leia and struggles to catch up despite her being tiny. Episode 4 fucking sucks. It's a complete rehash of A New Hope's Death Star infiltration, not to mention, it's filler, with shit choreography and the stupidest scenes I've watched in a TV show that's trying to be serious. At one point, it gets to Tom and Jerry levels of ridiculous. I was pretty worried Ben would end up sidelining his own show, which he did, and my other concern was the show wouldn't know what to do with its 6-episode run, which it also did. I will say I enjoyed it infinitely more than Beta Fett and actually caught myself having fun during this show. We finally got to see the Force at its full potential. The lightsaber fights didn't feel as clunky as the sequels, but we're still missing something. The segment with Vader beating Reva without even trying was the chef's kiss. And the final confrontation between Vader and Ben was beautiful. Although I wish Ben had a meaningful flashback to something that actually mattered, not just what we've seen on the show. Alright, let's talk about the bad stuff. I already knew how episode 6 would turn out based on the end of episode 5. The second I saw Reva looking at the message about Luke, I guess she would go after him and either die fighting Obi-Wan or turn back to the light for her own series. I also knew there would probably be a Vader fight and that Ben would have to win to prevent any canon errors. This show had to be inconsequential due to its place on the timeline. The spectacle of a few good scenes was a nice touch, but ultimately not enough to excuse the bullshit. It's hard to stay interested in this franchise when piggybacking off of nostalgia is the only interesting content we get. It really is a shame that Star Wars has been focused on a 70-year window with a handful of planets and characters when it has limitless potential in all sorts of eras to explore. Also, why the fuck are all the planets in this so boring? With the exception of Alderaan and Daiyu, the environments are bland and lifeless. And the music, a quintessential part of Star Wars, is so muted it might as well not be there. At this point, I might just watch all the upcoming Star Wars schlock to make videos. I really wanted to care about this, but no matter what they throw into it, Vader, Ben, Leia, and the Grand Inquisitor have to survive. Meaning Tala and Reva are the only meaningful characters that could have potentially died. Reva's backstory gave us some Anakin child murder scenes, but other than that, her whole arc adds nothing. And the worst part is, she fights Vader, essentially ending her allegiance with darkness, only to U-turn and try to kill Vader's son. It's completely anticlimactic, and the whole plot thread wasted screen time that was direly needed elsewhere. I didn't give a shit about Tala either. In fact, her entire involvement in episode 4 was awful. She communicates with Ben in front of other Imperials, slaps a stormtrooper, and the choreography in this scene is just complete shit. The Tom and Jerry scene still fucking kills me. I appreciate that they made a new character and actually had the guts to kill her. I just wish they had actually spent more of the show fleshing out Vader and Ben instead. It didn't pick up until the last 2 episodes, and by then there was nowhere near enough screen time to satisfyingly tie up the series. This show had a lot going up against it, and sadly, it wasn't necessary at all. I had a lot of fun with the Vader moments, but other than the dynamic of Anakin and Obi-Wan, nothing caught my interest over the course of the 6 episodes. This show suffers from several directorial issues. For starters, the camera's constantly being shaken, it's ugly, and it obscures everything. Another problem is the disconnect between what's written and what we see. I imagine that the scene with Tala knocking out an officer was intended to be more believable, and that the gate Obi-Wan shot was actually written to be an obstacle and not something easily circumventable. The dialogue also sucked all the way up to the climax between Vader and Ben.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Goodbye, Darth.
That whole segment was easily the best live-action Star Wars we've gotten since Revenge of the Sith. One tiny nitpick I have is the lack of de-aging used. Obi-Wan's beard covers up for it, but Anakin is supposed to be 20 and he looks 50 in episode 5. Also, Qui-Gon looked way older despite being dead for 20 plus years. For a company with an infinite budget, they sure went easy on this show. Boba Fett had $50 million more to work with.
Unless, of course, you're lying.
I also need to bring up all the issues in the finale. The transport has a broken hyperdrive, but a small shuttle on board has an inactive one, so Ben plans to distract the Imperials so they can escape. For one, why doesn't the Star Destroyer just send out TIE fighters to get the transport, or split up and take out Obi-Wan and the rebels? Vader didn't let anyone on the ship fight, so they might as well have been hunting down the other ship instead. Also, why did it take 10 minutes of Ben talking to people before he tried anything? The Destroyer also presumably watched Obi-Wan fly off after beating Vader. Reva goes from being badly injured in the last episode to running around completely unfazed. She also has no motivation or obligation to go after Luke. Also, she was already on Tatooine at the beginning when Ben was still being chased, despite her injuries and having no ship. Meaning Obi-Wan got to Tatooine in minutes after beating Vader. She also fought Luke's aunt and uncle for an extended amount of time with nobody getting injured or killed. Wouldn't this part completely kill the canon? She's chasing after Luke with a lightsaber. He probably sees this, so why does he still react with wonder to turning on the Youngling Slayer? Not to mention Reva just gives up. She hunted Jedi for years and doesn't kill the only potential connection Vader had left. which I might add he knew nothing about at the time. If her heart wasn't in it, then why show it at all? It's just more screen time being wasted. Worst of all, Palpatine shows up, and Vader just decides he doesn't care anymore, so I guess he just stops looking for Kenobi. This shit is so fucking irritating. A character driven solely by hatred is reduced to a yes man. There's a ton more plot holes in this, to the point that I can make a whole video about them. It's not just the writing either, this series feels completely rushed and like nothing at all was planned. Reva especially. Her involvement in the plot could be cut out and there would be no change whatsoever. I have no hatred towards the actor, in fact I always separate the character and the person who plays them. With a good script she could have been a great secondary antagonist, potentially changing to lie before she's killed by Vader for treason. Why in all of this did we only get a handful of incredible scenes? 4.5 hours. That's all the time they had to work with. I mean, it'd be a little bit different if all the good stuff was in one segment, but no. It's a back and forth fight between garbage and good, with the ending coming abruptly. They wasted the entire setup meandering around, and I feel that a longer show would have outstayed its welcome. I still can't believe they had the gall to throw in a filler episode even though they badly needed the runtime. As of late, all these Disney shows feel like they have no plan. They just make random shit happen to get to the climax. I think the worst part is the original saga had no clear plan either. Luke and Leia weren't going to be related, Vader wasn't going to be Luke's father, and only one of the prequel films actually mattered. Even with this lack of planning, the original films were still enjoyable. And then we have Boba Fett. It was a jumbled mess that would rather focus on scenes of no importance and the main character of another show than its own protagonist. Moon Knight actually mirrors this show. The last 2 episodes pick up, and the climax is 2 battles at the same time. These shows all feel formulaic, and their sole purpose is to set up other IPs, creating a cycle of profit for Disney while the fans get endless mediocrity instead of finely crafted media that we all want. I honestly would have preferred this show to be a movie with a high budget, and originally it was going to be one, but the executives forced them to stretch it out and make it a TV show. I am not alone in preferring quality over quantity. This should have been a standalone Kenobi movie. The few bits of good stuff was awesome, and I loved it, but in those moments I saw a glimpse of what could have been. I can't help but feel a little bit sad about what Star Wars has become. Disney keeps taking the safe route, never going all out, and in trying to please everyone, you satisfy no one.